And as you can see on the map right here, you can't just pull these units in large proportion out because all the pressure that Russia has. You see all those little red triangle or square looking things, those are individual brigades on the Russian side. And Ukraine has been doing a really good job up in this point so far with tying in existing defensive positions with their forces that they've been fighting and the experience they've had. Well, now then, if they weaken each of these brigades that they have defending there to go and stop Kharkiv assault, then the Russians are going to gain an upper hand here. And that's just one area. That's in the northern sector. I can show you the same thing in the central and in the southern sector. There's three main areas where this is starting to be a problem. And now then we see the potential for there to be a break in the Ukrainian lines. One of the things I've been talking about for a long time, and I think that may be one of the prime objectives of this operation here, is that by opening up a new front, and if Russia genuinely does have another 40 to 50,000 troops in that area that can reinforce and exploit any breaks in the north and start to really put Kharkiv in danger, then that could give even more pressure on Kiev to move entire units out of other sectors to try and stop that. But you see, you run out of firemen, so to speak. The fire brigade idea, you don't have enough fire brigades. So then something's got to give. You're either going to give in here in the east or you're going to give in the north. But it appears that unless something changes pretty quick, that Ukraine will be in real danger of not having enough men to defend the whole thing, whereas Russia does appear to have enough men in the offensive. Now, there's many things still yet to go, and we're not completely sure how a lot of things are going to play out. This is only like day 4, basically, since they started. So it's still possible that Ukraine maybe can move some reserves up from the western part of the country, people who have not been engaged before, that maybe had been in territorial defense or even in some of the other areas where Russia may not have come in. So they may be moving them to try not, rob Peter to pay Paul kind of situation from the eastern front. And maybe that will work. Perhaps they could hold it up if they get both more ammunition and more men. But you see, it's going to be a net loss for the Ukraine side. And especially if some reports that I saw just before coming on air here, that there remains a grouping of the Russians north of Sumy, which have not yet done anything. And if they open up yet another new front up there and start making penetrations, then you just run out of troops really quick. And I don't know how Ukraine is going to stop that one. And that is what we're watching right now. And it's just a chess game and even a checkers game to try right now just to stop the bleeding. I mean, this is a crisis for the Ukraine side. It's bigger than what I think a lot of people think. Maybe they can stop the bleeding. Maybe they can get this thing back into an attritional environment. But right now, Russia, for the first time since the opening round of the war, is making some pretty big moves inward. Now, the other thing I want to talk about real briefly while we're here today, you may have heard that the Russians have changed their defense minister. Sergei Shoigu was basically relieved of command. He was given a title if he's moving into the national security, whatever, but that's basically just saying, yeah, you're done, and we're going to, be nice to you, because you may not be aware, but Shoigu and Putin have a long personal history, many, many, many years. He's been a big ally of his, so he's not just going to put him out to pasture. But this signals a few things that I want to talk about real briefly, because I know people are wondering what's behind all this. And I think that this actually goes back to something that happened almost exactly a year ago, when then Yevgeny Prigozhin, who was the leader of the Wagner Group, had some huge issues with the senior leaders, especially of Shoigu, and just enumerated a bunch of things in public, very much out loud, about problems he had with the way Russia was conducting the war, things he said the Russian army wasn't doing, that his forces were doing. He was being almost uniquely successful in the Bakhmut area, whereas the rest of the Russian army was just moving inches or not moving at all. And that was a big problem to Prigozhin, which he put open. Now, of course, as you know, I think a month or two later, he led he got so angry, he led what appeared to be a possible coup into Russia, up into Moscow, which was stopped. Putin got really angry about it. They said, okay, well, we just kind of had our, discussion about it, and allegedly on the surface everything was fine, and then Prigozhin mysteriously is killed a few months later in a very mysterious, not mysterious plane crash. Now, I thought at the time that many of Prigozhin's, again, just speaking from a purely military perspective, Prigozhin's arguments were valid. Many of the things he was complaining about to the leader, the guy who planned all this operation, Many of the things I've told you about, especially in the early phases of the war, were huge strategic blunders by the Russian side, major mistakes. And who's that but the guy at the top? He's the one who approves all these operations. He's the one who gets the troops ready. So all the things that they had done wrong, really the buck stops there at the guy at the top who's in charge of it. But I also thought there's no way that Putin can basically do what Prigozhin said and fire him at the time. I thought that he would probably kind of distance him from it, maybe get some other people to start doing some things different, to listen to what Prigozhin said and putting those things into operation. Now, there is evidence, and we're not going to know any of this for sure until probably many years from now when our people can go through archives and talk to different people and find out. But from what I can observe, it really seems to me that Russia did make some of the changes, that the Russian army itself took on some of the operation tactics that were successful for Prigozhin. And now you see, especially over the last 6 or 8 months, has been a lot more effective tactically. And now then I think that finally a year later, when it can be made like, okay, well, this is just because Putin has a new administration and he's bringing some new people in. And so that's why he's changing him out, and he's done a good job, whatever they'll be saying publicly. But I think this is the good time for him to use that excuse to say, all right, we're going to get rid of it. Now, I want to show you, we're showing a little bit of it on the screen here, but I want to actually play this. This is what Prigozhin said in, I think this one is from May of 2023. Check this out.
У нас нехватка боеприпасов 70%. Шойгу! Герасимов! Где боеприпасы? Посмотрите на них,
So he was very animated about that, and of course went on to say, that you guys should be fired and you should come down in front of the front line and all this. And then I told you what happened subsequent to that. Now, there was, I think this morning in Deutsche Welle, the German station, there was another analyst who kind of thinks the same kind of thing. He thinks that may have had something to do with this. Check this out.
About a year ago, there was this mutiny of the Prigozhin Wagner group that we don't hear anymore in the news, but which was very influential a year ago or 2 years ago when the Russian war, big invasion started, that mercenary group. So Prigozhin attacked the defense minister and the head of the general staff very harshly, he humiliated them both, actually. So observers were expecting a resignation of Shoigu last year, but he's a very close ally of Vladimir Putin. That's why he kept him for a year.
And now we see that actually happened, because really, short of what that theory there's really no other reason to get Shoigu out. I mean, look, Sergei Lavrov, the Minister of Foreign Affairs, he's been in office for 20-something years. He just got re-upped as well. So, given the way Russia normally operates, there's a reason. And it's not just because, well, I want to put him into a different position in the National Security Council. And then they've elevated a guy who's primarily a financial guy. Actually, he's good at numbers, he's good at industry, and I think that kind of shows you where Russia is going right now, is that they're saying, hey, I want to bring in somebody who's going to even further strengthen our industrial capacity, somebody who's got a lot of experience with that. Of course, naturally, he also does have a close relationship with Putin going back many years, somebody that he can trust at the top. But now then they are really saying, we're just going to continue to expand our defense industrial base and all the strengths we've made in building more jets. They've actually been building more fighter jets, tanks, artillery pieces, and certainly artillery ammunition, drones of all different calibers and categories, and then, of course, missiles and Kinzhal missiles, the hypersonics, all of that. That's where their focus is. And as I've been telling you many times, the quantitative and qualitative advantage that Russia has over the Ukraine side is just going to continue to grow over time. And that's what we're seeing here. And now then we're seeing on the front, especially with what's going on in the north, what may yet be going on north of Sumy, and what is already going on in the eastern front. There's a number of places where Russia continues to push back, because while everybody's focused up on the north, all the fighting in the east is continuing on, and Russia continues to methodically move forward there as well. So it's a very dangerous time for Ukraine. I think you saw that in Zelensky's voice, and I think that it's for good reason, and just reinforces my position. Now is the time for the West to recognize what's going on, acknowledge reality, seek a negotiated settlement on the best terms available. Every day you wait, the conditions get worse for Ukraine, and the deal will get worse for Kiev. And the less likely Putin is when he's making this progress to even want to have a negotiated settlement without actually gaining more territory in the negotiations. And that's entirely possible too. And as bad as that would be, the worst thing we could do is to continue to ignore and hope in fantasy that these very fundamental things magically reverse, because then Ukraine is going to lose even more men, more territory, and get more cities destroyed like Volchansk is right now. That's where we are. Thank you very much for joining us today. Sorry for this odd background here, but keeping you guys informed is more important to me than taking the weekend off. We're going to continue to bring this information to you. And if anything else breaks, you can count on us wherever I happen to be in the world. We're going to bring it to you. Thanks, and we'll see you on the next episode. Daniel Davis Deep Dive.